Welcome to Crime Line. I'm Angela. Tonight, we undertake a deep exploration into a case that not only captured headlines but also broke hearts and ignited a profound, enduring demand for justice, the tragic and violent death of Shanquella Robinson. In the landscape of true crime, some stories resonate with a particular poignancy, not just for the tragedy they recount, but for the raw nerves they expose about society, justice, and the often perilous journey of truth. The story of Shanquella Monique Robinson is one such saga, a narrative of a vibrant young life extinguished too soon, of a dream vacation twisted into an unimaginable nightmare, and of a family's indomitable spirit in the face of systemic failures and a deafening wall of alleged deceit. Shanquella Robinson was the embodiment of youthful ambition and effervescent joy. At 25, this Charlotte, North Carolina native was more than just a pretty face. She was a budding entrepreneur, a graduate of Winston-Salem State University, and the creative mind behind two businesses: Exquisite Babies, a children's clothing boutique known for its custom designs, and the Exquisite Boutique, which catered to adult fashion. Friends and family remember her infectious smile, her loyalty, her drive, and a spirit that seemed destined for great things. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, who, like many her age, cherished experiences and the bonds of companionship. In late October 2022, Shanquella embarked on what should have been a celebratory escape, a trip to the sun-drenched shores of San Jose del Cabo, Mexico, a popular, upscale resort destination at the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula. The occasion was reportedly to celebrate a friend's birthday. On Friday, October 28, 2022, Shanquella and a group of 6 companions checked into Villa Linda 32, an opulent, privately owned residence nestled within the exclusive Fundadores neighborhood of Puerto Los Cabos. This was a realm of luxury where multi-million-dollar homes, private beach clubs, and world-class golf courses cater to an affluent clientele, with villas like theirs commanding nightly rental fees in the thousands. The group accompanying Shanquella was a mix of individuals she had known for years, some reportedly since her college days at Winston-Salem State, and perhaps others who were more recent additions to her social circle. They were Dejane Jackson, Elise Hyatt, Malik Dyer, Winter Donovan, Khalil Cook, and Nazir Tyree Wiggin. Allegations later surfaced in a civil lawsuit that Shanquella had been a last-minute addition to the trip, invited after other intended guests had canceled. For Shanquella, the anticipation was likely for days filled with laughter, sunshine, and shared memories. She could not have fathomed that this paradise would, in less than 24 hours, become the setting for her brutal, untimely death. The idyllic dream shattered with terrifying speed. On the afternoon of Saturday, October 29, 2022, Shanquella Robinson was pronounced dead, thousands of miles away in Charlotte. Her mother, Salamandra Robinson, and father, Bernard, were thrown into a vortex of unimaginable horror by a series of frantic, confusing, and ultimately deeply misleading phone calls from the very people who had accompanied their daughter. The initial narrative relayed to them was chillingly simplistic. Shanquella, they claimed, had died from alcohol poisoning. Members of the group, including a male friend and then reportedly Dejane Jackson, told Salamandra that Shanquella had fallen ill after drinking, that a doctor had been summoned to the villa, but that, despite these efforts, she had succumbed. Even in the blinding fog of grief, a profound sense of unease settled upon Shanquella's parents. Their daughter wasn't known to be a heavy drinker. She was a healthy, vibrant young woman. The story felt wrong, incomplete, and riddled with an unspoken dread. This parental intuition, this gnawing feeling that there was more to the story, something far more sinister, would soon be horrifically validated. The on-site medical response in Cabo, as it later emerged through various reports and eventually details cited in legal filings, only added layers of confusion and contradiction. Dr. Carolina Beatriz Ornelas Gutierrez, from the local American Medical Center was reportedly called to Villa Linda 32. She found Shanquella dehydrated, disoriented, verbally unresponsive, and appearing intoxicated. The travel companions allegedly reiterated to the doctor that Shanquella had simply drunk a lot of alcohol, despite the doctor recommending that Shanquella be taken to a hospital for proper evaluation and treatment. The group reportedly insisted that she be treated within the confines of the villa. Astonishingly, an initial police report, purportedly based on eyewitness accounts at the scene, including Dr. Ornelas Gutierrez's, concluded that Shanquella had died from cardiopulmonary arrest as a result of alcohol poisoning, approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes after the doctor was first called. This initial, on-the-ground assessment would stand in stark, horrifying contrast to the forensic truth that was soon to emerge. The carefully constructed narrative of an accidental death began to unravel with the release of official documents from Mexico when Shanquella's body was repatriated to the United States. It was accompanied by a Mexican death certificate and a detailed autopsy report performed by forensic medical examiner Dr. René Adalberto Galvan Beltran, under the auspices of the Procuraduría General de Justicia del Estado de Baja California Sur, the State Attorney General's Office of Baja California Sur. These documents delivered a bombshell. Shanquella Robinson had not died from alcohol poisoning. The official cause of death was listed as severe spinal cord injury and atlas subluxation, a broken neck. Specifically at the C1 vertebra, the critical juncture where the skull meets the spine. Such an injury is almost invariably the result of significant, violent trauma. Even more chillingly, the report estimated the time between the infliction of this injury and her death to be a mere 15 minutes. This pointed not to a gradual decline from excessive drinking, but to a sudden, brutal, and rapidly fatal event. The Mexican authorities, led by State Prosecutor Antonio Lopez Rodriguez, took another crucial step. They officially classified Shanquella Robinson's death as femicide. In Mexico, as in many other Latin American nations, femicide is a specific, aggravated classification of homicide, legally defined as the intentional killing of a woman or girl precisely because of her gender. This designation often implies a context of extreme brutality, misogyny, hatred, or a situation where the victim was rendered particularly vulnerable due to her gender. This legal determination was a profound statement by the Mexican investigators. They believed Shanquella was not just murdered, but that her killing bore the hallmarks of a gender-based hate crime, an exceptionally serious charge carrying significant legal weight in Mexico. This official stance provided the first irrefutable legal validation of the Robinson family's deepest fears their daughter had been violently killed. If the autopsy report painted a grim picture, a cell phone video that surfaced and went viral globally in mid-November 2022 provided the horrifying, visceral proof. The footage, less than a minute long, was a sickening window into Shanquella's final, terrifying moments. Filmed, it appeared, by one of her travel companions inside a bedroom of Villa Linda 32, it showed Shanquella, naked, visibly disoriented, and utterly defenseless. She was being savagely and repeatedly assaulted by another woman. Shanquella offered no resistance. Her body language was one of passivity, perhaps suggesting she was already injured, too terrified to fight back, or possibly even incapacitated by other means, a chilling thought, given the initial, now clearly false, claims of extreme intoxication. The attacker, later identified in court documents and by a broad consensus of online horrified viewers as Dejane Jackson, one of Shanquella's travel companions, is seen pummeling Shanquella with a barrage of punches to her head and face. Shanquella is then violently thrown to the floor, where Jackson delivers a brutal final knee strike to her head or neck area. The callousness of the scene was compounded by the voice of a man, purportedly Malik Dyer, another member of the Cabo Six, who was apparently filming the assault. Instead of intervening to protect Shanquella, he is heard taunting her, his words dripping with derision, Shanquella, can you at least fight back? Get up." There was no concern in his voice, no attempt to stop the violence, only a chilling detachment as he documented the brutalization of a defenseless woman. The video ignited a firestorm of global outrage. It provided a horrifying visual narrative that aligned with the Mexican autopsy's findings of fatal trauma to Shanquella's neck and spine. Social media platforms were inundated with posts demanding #justice for Shanquella. The video's circulation, while ethically fraught due to its graphic nature, became an undeniable catalyst, transforming Shanquella's tragedy from a distant news item into an immediate, visceral call for action that resonated with millions worldwide. It made it impossible for the initial, sanitized version of events to stand. In the immediate wake of these shocking revelations, the damning autopsy and the viral video, Mexican authorities appeared to move with purpose. State prosecutor Daniel de la Rosa Anaya publicly confirmed that Shanquella's death was being actively investigated as a femicide. By late November 2022, a significant development occurred. An arrest warrant was officially issued in Mexico for an American woman, identified as the likely responsible individual and the direct aggressor in Shanquella's death. While her name was not initially released in that specific official announcement, it was widely understood, and later confirmed through various channels, that the warrant targeted Dejane Jackson. Concurrently, Mexican officials announced their intention to initiate international extradition proceedings. This formal request would be channeled through the Mexican Attorney General's office and the Foreign Ministry to the United States, seeking Jackson's return to Mexico to face trial on the grave charge of femicide. This news, when it broke, offered a fragile glimmer of hope to Shanquella's grieving family and their vast network of supporters. It suggested that, at least in Mexico, the wheels of criminal justice were beginning to turn. However, the path to justice across international borders is rarely straightforward. The initial promise of swift action soon encountered the formidable and often frustrating realities of international law, diplomatic protocols, and the inherent complexities of cross-border cooperation between sovereign nations. While Mexico had issued a valid arrest warrant and had formally signaled its intent to seek extradition, the process itself is governed by a detailed treaty between the United States and Mexico. This treaty is replete with specific legal standards, procedural requirements, and avenues for legal challenge by the individual targeted for extradition. In the U.S., such requests are handled by the Department of Justice, specifically its Office of International Affairs, and any extradition order must often withstand rigorous scrutiny and potential litigation in U.S. federal courts. Months stretched into a year, and then longer. Yet, Dejane Jackson remained in the United States. There was no public indication that the extradition process was advancing, nor that an arrest was imminent on U.S. soil pursuant to the Mexican warrant. This prolonged inertia became a source of immense frustration and anguish for the Robinson family and their advocates. It fueled accusations that U.S. authorities were not according the case the priority it deserved, or were perhaps even, through inaction or bureaucratic delay, passively hindering the Mexican request. The stark disparity between the apparent urgency of the Mexican prosecutors, who had swiftly identified a suspect and a serious crime, and the seeming lack of reciprocal action from the U.S. side became a glaring point of contention. This situation highlighted broader systemic challenges inherent in international criminal justice, differing legal priorities between nations, potential, though often unspoken, political considerations, the high evidentiary burden typically required in U.S. courts for extradition matters, and the intrinsic difficulties in coordinating investigations and sharing evidence effectively across borders, especially when dealing with violent crimes that may not neatly align with federal U.S. statutes. The Robinson family found themselves ensnared in a bewildering and painful bureaucratic and diplomatic quagmire. Their quest for justice for Shanquella became a stark illustration of how international legal mechanisms, designed to facilitate cooperation, can sometimes falter, leaving victims and their families in a prolonged state of uncertainty and despair. This is a reality often faced in transnational cases, and one that raised uncomfortable questions about the value placed on seeking justice for Black American women when crimes occur abroad. Parallel to the Mexican investigation, the Charlotte Field Office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) had opened its own inquiry in November 2022. This is standard procedure when a U.S. citizen dies violently in a foreign country, as the FBI has jurisdiction to investigate certain violent crimes committed against U.S. nationals overseas. There was considerable public and familial hope that the FBI, with its formidable resources, investigative expertise, and international reach, would either bring federal charges against those responsible or, at the very least, act decisively to support and facilitate the extradition sought by Mexico. The Bureau's investigation would have involved a comprehensive review of all available evidence, including the harrowing video footage, the detailed Mexican autopsy report, and any forensic evidence gathered from the scene at Villa Linda 32. Crucially, it would also have involved conducting their own interviews with the Cabo Six upon their return to American soil, seeking to piece together an accurate timeline and uncover any inconsistencies or falsehoods in their accounts. However, this avenue, too, led to profound disappointment and outrage. On April 12, 2023, nearly 6 months after Shanquella's death, the U.S. Department of Justice, acting through the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of North Carolina, issued a statement that dealt a devastating blow to the Robinson family and their supporters. After what was described as a careful and thorough investigation, federal prosecutors announced that they had informed Ms. Robinson's family that the available evidence does not support a federal prosecution. The statement underscored the high evidentiary standard in federal criminal cases, beyond a reasonable doubt, and asserted that, based on the totality of the evidence they had reviewed, including the results of a U.S. autopsy, they could not meet this stringent burden of proof for any federal crime falling within UN jurisdiction. Legal experts pointed out that for the U.S. to prosecute a murder or assault that occurred in Mexico, even if both victim and perpetrator were U.S. citizens, specific federal statutes such as those pertaining to kidnapping leading to death, or murder for hire, or certain terrorism-related statutes would need to be met. And evidently, the facts of Shanquella's case, as understood by the FBI, did not align with these narrow jurisdictional gateways, while the Department of Justice did offer the standard caveat that the investigation could be reopened if new, credible information came to light. The decision felt to many like a definitive and deeply unjust closing of a critical door for holding Shanquella's alleged assailants accountable within the American legal system. The conflicting autopsy findings emerged as a central and highly contentious complicating factor in the case, particularly influencing the FBI's prosecutorial decision. While the Mexican autopsy had been unequivocal in its determination of a fatal broken neck and spinal cord injury, leading to the classification of femicide, a second autopsy conducted in the United States reportedly by the Mecklenburg County Medical Examiner's Office in North Carolina, after Shanquella's body had been embalmed and transported back, allegedly yielded different, or at least less conclusive, findings. The full U.S. autopsy report was not made widely public, but statements from the Robinson family's legal team and information cited by the Department of Justice in their declination statement suggested that the U.S. examination did not corroborate the acute traumatic spinal cord injury or the atlas subluxation broken neck as the definitive and sole cause of death in the same way the Mexican authorities had. Instead, there were suggestions that the UC report might have pointed to other physiological factors or was less definitive about a singular, instantaneous act of violence being the direct cause. Some reports indicated the U.S. autopsy may have noted findings such as cerebral edema, brain swelling, a condition that can result from various causes, including trauma, but doesn't necessarily isolate the same direct violent mechanism of a broken neck with the same degree of certainty. Such discrepancies between pathological examinations in international cases, while not entirely uncommon, create significant legal and investigative hurdles. Differences can arise from a multitude of factors, variations in examination protocols, and methodologies between countries. The physiological changes that can occur in a body after the passage of time and the embalming process, which can obscure or alter certain forensic evidence, or simply differing interpretations of the observed evidence by highly skilled pathologists. In Shanquella's case, these divergent medical opinions on the precise mechanism and cause of her death undoubtedly complicated the FBI's ability to build a federal criminal case that could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It provided a starkly different medical narrative that could be, and likely was, used to challenge the certainty of the Mexican findings within the U.S. legal context. For Shanquella's grieving family, these conflicting reports only added layers of profound confusion, anguish, and a deepening sense of distrust in the very systems that were supposed to provide clarity and deliver justice. Frustrated by the apparent impasse in criminal proceedings both in the U.S. and the stalled extradition to Mexico, Shanquella Robinson's family, displaying remarkable strength and resilience, resolved to seek accountability through another avenue, the civil court system. On October 27, 2024, a date heavy with the sorrow of the 2-year anniversary of Shanquella's tragic death, her parents, Salamandra and Bernard Robinson, filed a comprehensive and multi-million-dollar wrongful death lawsuit in the Mecklenburg County Superior Court in North Carolina. This civil action named all 6 individuals who had accompanied Shanquella on that ill-fated trip to Cabo Jackson, Elise Hyatt, Malik Dyer, Winter Donovan, Khalil Cook, and Nazir Tyree Wiggin. The civil complaint laid out a litany of devastating allegations, painting a picture of horrific betrayal and callous negligence. It included claims of assault and battery, specifically targeting Dejani Jackson for the physical attack captured on video. Crucially, it alleged gross negligence against all 6 defendants, asserting that they had a collective duty of care towards Shanquella and had catastrophically failed in that duty by not protecting her from harm, by failing to secure timely and appropriate medical assistance after she was grievously injured, and by allegedly misleading medical personnel about the true nature and severity of her condition. Furthermore, the lawsuit alleged a civil conspiracy among the group, implying they acted in concert to cause Shanquella harm or, at the very least, to subsequently conceal the true circumstances surrounding her death through a coordinated false narrative. The suit also sought damages for the intentional infliction of emotional distress upon Shanquella during her final hours and upon her family in the aftermath. The lawsuit detailed specific alleged actions with chilling clarity: that Shanquella was a last-minute invitee, that Dejani Jackson brutally attacked her in a bedroom, that no one called for help during or immediately after the assault, but instead, members of the group recorded the attack and callously posted it on social media. It alleged that hours passed before they requested a doctor, to whom they falsely claimed Shanquella was merely dehydrated from drinking. Most damnably, the suit asserted that the group actively refused to take Shanquella to a hospital, despite a doctor's recommendation to do so, and that they interfered with life-saving efforts by continuing to lie to medical staff. Unlike a criminal case, which requires the prosecution to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt and can result in imprisonment, a civil wrongful death lawsuit seeks monetary damages and requires the plaintiffs to prove liability by a preponderance of the evidence, a lower burden, meaning it is more likely than not that the defendants were responsible. This avenue, while not offering the same form of punitive justice as a criminal conviction, provides a critical platform for presenting evidence, compelling testimony under oath through depositions and discovery, and potentially achieving a formal legal finding of liability against those deemed responsible for Shanquella's death. For the Robinson family, it represented not just a claim for financial compensation for their immeasurable loss, but a continued, determined fight to have the full, unvarnished truth of Shanquella's final hours officially documented and scrutinized in a court of law. As expected in such high-stakes litigation, the civil suit immediately faced legal challenges. By May 2025, at least two of the defendants, Elise Hyatt and Winter Donovan, had filed motions to dismiss the lawsuit. Their primary argument centered on jurisdiction, contending that because the incident occurred in Mexico, the case should be adjudicated under Mexican law and in Mexican courts, not in North Carolina. They also asserted in their filings that they were mere bystanders and did not participate in the physical altercation. A significant hearing regarding these motions to dismiss was held before Judge Max Cogburn Jr. around May 14, 2025. Judge Cogburn, who appeared familiar with the widely publicized case, noted pointedly during the hearing that the travel companions had left Mexico before the local investigation was concluded. He did not issue an immediate ruling, indicating a decision would be forthcoming in the subsequent weeks. The Robinson family's attorney, Sue Ann Robinson, no relation to the family, vehemently opposed the motions to dismiss, arguing that the case was appropriately filed in U.S. courts because the principal parties involved are U.S. citizens and because key aspects of the alleged conspiracy and cover-up, including the initial false reports to Shanquella's mother, also occurred or had impact within the United States. Meanwhile, reports surfaced that Diajanai Jackson, the woman depicted in the viral video attacking Shanquella, had allegedly changed her name and relocated to Connecticut, and as of mid-May 2025 had not yet formally responded to the lawsuit, further demonstrating their unwavering resolve to challenge every perceived injustice from every possible angle. Shanquella's family also took the extraordinary and bold step of suing the U.S. federal government itself. In early 2025, news emerged of a $100 million lawsuit filed by Salamandra Robinson against the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the U.S. Department of State. This monumental lawsuit, likely pursued under the framework of the Federal Tort Claims Act, which provides a limited waiver of sovereign immunity for certain torts committed by federal employees, accused these powerful federal agencies of profound negligence and dereliction of duty in their handling of Shanquella's case. The allegations were extensive and damning. They included claims that the agencies had fundamentally bungled and improperly conducted the investigation into Shanquella's death, had failed to adequately coordinate with Mexican authorities or to pursue leads with sufficient vigor, and had mishandled crucial evidence. A significant and deeply personal grievance highlighted in the lawsuit was the prolonged and unexplained failure of these agencies to return Shanquella's personal belongings to her family, items such as her cell phone, clothing, and Apple Watch. These possessions held not only immense sentimental value for her grieving parents, but were also viewed as potential sources of critical evidentiary information that could shed further light on the events leading up to her death. The federal government, through its attorneys, predictably moved to have this lawsuit dismissed. In court filings, government lawyers cited the ongoing review of voluminous materials, over 4,000 pages of documents and more than 2 hours of video footage, and invoked privacy laws and procedural delays as reasons for the pace of their actions. The FBI also asserted that the release of certain records from their investigation could potentially interfere with enforcement proceedings, a statement that, while standard in some respects, did little to assuage the family's concerns or their suspicions about the thoroughness and transparency of the federal inquiry. The Robinson family had previously voiced their frustration over heavily redacted documents provided by the FBI in response to their Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests. This bold lawsuit against federal agencies was a clear indictment of the institutions the family believed had failed them at multiple critical junctures, compounding their immeasurable grief with a profound sense of institutional betrayal and a feeling that their quest for answers was being actively stonewalled. And so, as we mark this moment in late May 2025, nearly 3 years since Shanquella Robinson's vibrant life was so cruelly and senselessly extinguished in that luxury villa in Cabo San Lucas, the anguished cry for justice for Shanquella echoes with undiminished passion and urgency around the globe. It is a movement sustained by the unwavering, almost superhuman determination of her parents, Salamandra and Bernard. It is fueled by a global community of supporters who have connected with Shanquella's story through the raw immediacy of social media. It is amplified by activists, legal advocates, and civil rights organizations who see in her case a reflection of broader systemic injustices. The hashtags #Justice for Shanquella, #Say Her Name, Shanquella Robinson, #Cabo Six continue to circulate, serving as digital beacons that keep her memory alive and maintain relentless pressure on authorities in both the United States and Mexico. The core demands of this movement have never wavered: the arrest and successful extradition of Dejani Jackson to face the femicide charges that await her in Mexico, and meaningful accountability, whether criminal or civil, for any and all individuals who played a role in Shanquella's death or who subsequently attempted to obscure the truth through deception and silence. Shanquella's story has become a tragic but powerful touchstone for critical and often uncomfortable conversations across America and beyond. It has forced a renewed focus on the safety of Black women, particularly when traveling, and the unique vulnerabilities they may face. It has prompted soul-searching discussions about the nature of friendship, the horror of peer betrayal, and the moral courage required to intervene in the face of violence. It has laid bare the often frustrating inadequacies and daunting complexities of international legal cooperation and the desperate search for justice across sovereign borders. And it has amplified the pervasive and painful sense, felt deeply within many communities, that justice can be elusive and accountability often deferred, especially when the victims are marginalized and the alleged perpetrators are shielded by distance, legal maneuvering, or systemic indifference. Despite the immense emotional toll, the crushing disappointments, and the formidable legal and bureaucratic hurdles they have faced, the fight for Shanquella Robinson endures. It stands as a powerful, living testament to a family's boundless love, their refusal to be silenced, and the collective human desire for truth, accountability, and a measure of peace in the face of unspeakable loss. The tragic story of Shanquella Robinson is far more than a singular, isolated incident. It is a harrowing odyssey through the deepest valleys of grief, a stark chronicle of alleged betrayal at its most intimate, and a sobering look into a labyrinthine quest for justice. It underscores the profound vulnerability that can exist even in settings marketed as idyllic paradises, the swift and devastating consequences of unchecked violence, and the systemic obstacles that can impede the pursuit of truth when international borders, differing legal frameworks, and conflicting official narratives collide. While the legal battles continue to wage on in multiple courts, and the ache in her family's hearts will undoubtedly endure, the legacy of Shanquella Robinson is also one of extraordinary resilience, the resilience of her beloved parents, and the resilience of a global community that refuses to allow her to be forgotten, or for her case to become just another unsolved statistic. Her life, so full of promise and light, was indeed cut short in the most brutal fashion, but the fierce, unyielding demand for justice that her death has ignited continues to illuminate a difficult path forward. A path her loved ones walk with courage and an unwavering hope that, one day, accountability will be served, and Shanquella Monique Robinson can finally, truly rest in peace. The path to justice is often agonizingly long and fraught with unforeseen challenges. As the Shanquella Robinson case so painfully and vividly illustrates, the pursuit of truth continues, driven by a love that death cannot extinguish, and a hope for accountability that refuses to fade. Thank you for joining me on Crimeline as we've journeyed through this deeply complex and heartbreaking case. We will continue to monitor any developments and hope that true accountability and peace may one day find the Robinson family.